Hey, everybody. Welcome to a New Earth podcast. My name is Chris Morrow, and I'll be one of many hosts on the show. Our goal is to share some insights, advice, and perspectives from people throughout the sustainability space. And my first guest is Derek Sabori, a guy who's been at that for 25 plus years. Derek got his start at Vulcan, where he spearheaded their ecological program. He got his master's from UCI and has been teaching sustainability to a lot of people within his own industry. But today he runs theunderswell.com, a sustainability coaching site. I would strongly encourage you to go check out his site and his great YouTube videos, which will take you down any number of rabbit holes. Now, today we talked about Derek's journey and how it really has changed his mindset about how he views the world along the way. I think you're going to like this one, and it might help you reshape your thoughts on how you approach sustainability. So let's jump right in. Tell me a little bit about exactly what you do on a day-to-day basis now and how you're helping brands evolve.
Yeah, thanks. Ultimately, I'm on a mission to get people this information and to help brands be more sustainable. But the way I look at it, it's like it's more urgent than ever that we act. And I know that brands play a really crucial role in all of this. I mean, nothing is going to happen without brands taking charge. Brands are made up of people. And people want to do the right thing, but just like we've said here, it's like most people just don't know. They weren't given the education, the knowledge, the insights, and they're just like, I don't even know where to start. So what I'm trying to do is like, hey, this is a place to come start. Whether you want to come go check out free videos, and I'm just going to unload stuff. I used to teach all of this in college, right? And I was watching industry people come in and take my class. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to them. So I go out to the brands and I do courses that I take into the brands. And so they'll put a cohort together. 10 or 20 people will go through a course with me for like 3 months. I meet with them every week to support them, guide them. I do a lot of sustainability counseling as well because about 2 or 3 weeks in, people are like, oh my God, they had the same thing that I had, the same thing that you're going through. And I'm like, it's okay. We're going to be all right. And we're going to get through this. And it's like I really try to make people comfortable, confident, and competent on sustainability talk. So that, because they're getting stuff thrown at them all day long in brands. Suppliers are coming to them with eco things and sustainable this and certified that, and they're just like, Derek, like what is better? And my answer is always this. I'm like, it just depends. Like there's going to be a lot of stuff that we've got to go through and look at. So let me teach you where to look, how to question, what all of these terms are, what these acronyms are. So to answer your question, I do workshops for brands, I do one-on-one coaching, I do all of it is around education though. I focus on education first, then I empower you with resources, and then we go into activate. So it's educate, empower, and activate. I think the problem that we've had is too many brands and people try to jump right to activation. They're like, what's our sustainability? We got to go. We got to go. We got to do something. They don't have the resources, so then they're working backwards. Like, what are the resources? When they see the resources, they don't know what any of it means, if it's good, if it's bad, why it's there. So, okay, let's flip it around. Let's educate first. Then I'll give you resources, and then you guys can act on all of that and put it into place. So
Yeah. Crawl before you start walking and that kind of
that's
stuff.
it.
Yeah. Talk to me about what that transformation was like because you kind of spearheaded it, didn't you, within Volcom?
I mean, I took the baton and ran with it. I'll say, there were a few of us that were started poking around and asking some questions, and actually, I would say the first influence came from the outside, as far as I'm concerned, because we started to have people, and one of them I still work with, Isaac Nicholson. He runs a company now called Circular Systems. He was bringing in fabrics to us, right? Recycled materials, hemp, and this was in the early 2000s. So he started showing us these fabrics, and I remember all of us just going, man, this is cool. And in my head I'm like, why is this the first time I'm seeing this or even hearing about organic cotton, recycled PET, or even hemp as a material? And so that was kind of my early trigger, and we got really excited about that. That kind of started to swirl around in terms of us just going, gosh, why we should be doing more of this. Frank Skura had a company called ASEC, the Action Sports Environmental Coalition, I believe it was, and he also kind of started to rally the troops around the brands and start to get this conversation going, and that really started to swirl things. We started to put those products in our line. We made this little line. It was called Volcom Verde, and eventually we had to change the name to what was called the Vecological series. But because of that line, we actually formed this little club. We said, cool, we're going to put these materials in there and start to promote this. Let's have a little eco club. and we called it the Ecological Society. And I happened to be one of the more passionate vocal people in there because everything I learned, I was like, this is crazy. What is this? I started to get really excited. So by then, I had 2 degrees. I had my MBA. We had 10 years of experience at Volcom, and I'm just like, I was just blown away that nobody had talked to me about this. The impacts of our business, climate change that was coming, unraveling our supply chains, and I just went, that's what I'm going to do. That's exactly what I want to do in this space. I'm not going to jump ship, but that is going to be from here on out. That will be the focus of my career, and I stuck with it. So that's sort of the long story.
And so you're talking about a company by that point that had been around for a good solid 10 years.
Yep.
That's not easy to turn that ship around. What steps did you guys need to take in your little club to get a little bit more attention to what was going on?
Yeah. So what we immediately had to do was one, start building culture. So because I became so vocal and passionate, and I sort of rose to the top of that little club, I guess I was nominated by Ethan Anderson, who was the creative director there. Right? And he just goes, "Hey D, you should be the head of this of this group." I'm like, okay, cool. But so he nominated me there. I think mostly because he's like, I don't want to do this. So I did, and what's funny is that things started to roll out from there. I remember one of the early things, so building culture, getting employees involved. And it's funny, now I call this the grilled cheese effect. And here's why. Because you have to start creating heat from the bottom up. So I started rallying the troops, all the employees, my department. I was in merchandising and design, getting the product teams fired up, the sales team, the marketing team, right? So we started swirling around that little collection. When we would go to the trade shows, we'd go to ASR. I would pull that line. I wasn't a sales rep, right? But I was in-house. But I would pull all that product out and go show it in the eco side of ASR, up in a room by myself, upstairs,
Oh,
and I
wow.
just kept hammering away, right? And so I really started to let people think that, wow, this is like a whole thing. It wasn't. I was just pulling samples off the rack and building a little, collection. But we started to do these things called Ecological Fridays. And so I would send out a newsletter every Friday. And Troy Eckert, who was Volcom's number one employee, first employee there, and VP of marketing, etc., he was keen on it too, and he was really supportive. And he goes, "Hey, I love this." And what he ended up doing, one of the first things I think that helped drive the program was he said, "I want you to come do this at the Vulcan Pipe Pro." So then I got kind of on the stage there, Vulcan Pipe Pro. Here's a sustainability guy in the booth commenting, with the headset with Jerry Lopez, Dave Stansfield, and I'm like, what am I doing here? This is
Commentating the
crazy.
pipe contest?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice.
And I'm
That's
upstairs at the pipe house, just like, this is surreal. But Troy was like, no, I want people to hear about this. I want them to know about this. Jason Steris, who was our president at the time, also just started to say, hey, I really like these newsletters, and I know all the employees do. Everybody's fired up on this. Can you keep doing it? I know it's not your job. So that was kind of warming up the company, right? And talking to our customers. But then I got the support too of Jason and Wooly. So J Dog and Wooly, and everybody was like, hey man, this is good. This is good. Let's keep it going. That newsletter eventually led to a full-time role. That full-time role eventually had Wooly say, you know what, I want you, come move upstairs. I got an office for you. 2 doors down from him. That sent a message to the company as well, like, hey, we're taking this role seriously. So that was that grilled cheese sandwich. We had heat coming from the top down, heat from the bottom up, and it just kind of kept swirling from there. But it was a slow burn. It took a lot of years. And I will say, though, that it was very superficial. Changing culture was one thing.
yeah.
But I remember sitting there, I'm like, okay, I've got this fancy new title, and I'm sitting upstairs, and everything is great. I remember looking, though, at all of our racks of samples we were about to go to show, and I'm like, but that is where the problem is. And I have no idea how to handle that.
Mm.
And that's when Volcom got acquired by Caring, and that's exactly what they were doing, right? So
Oh,
they were like, hey, we are rolling out this sustainability program. We're bringing all the brands together for the first time. I was actually one of the first to fly out to France after the acquisition to go and start working with all the other brands to build what is now their world-class sustainability program. And that helped us really dive into the supply chain and unravel that supply chain and really focus on the impacts of all of our product.
that's super interesting. So tell me this, when the the buyout happened and that whole thing, I'm sure it was a shock to the Southern California system and that culture. And even just going public, I've interviewed Troy before, and he talked about how overnight just being public was just crazy, how much
Yeah.
it was a culture shock. But it sounds like from where you were sitting, there were some positive aspects because the Europeans have gone a little further down the path. And what were the immediate sort of like eye openers that you discovered with them when they, kind of welcomed you into that fold? Was there anything that was sort of like, wow, right off the bat?
Definitely. There were a couple women that really played crucial roles there. Holly Dublin and Helen Crowley, PhDs, super gnarly ecosystem services, biodiversity experts. And I remember kind of the pushback that we got. So for me, I would say, oh yeah, we're a 1% for the planet member. We're doing this. We're doing these community activations, and we're doing this. And like, well, that's all nice. What are you doing for people in your supply chains where your product's built? I'm like, well, I don't know. We're doing beach cleanup. She's like, that's great. I want to know like all the way back, like at every touch point of your product. And I remember just like, I'm like, of course. I'm like, I don't know. We're not doing anything for people in India and Bangladesh and wherever we're making our products. We're not paying attention to beaches and ecosystems and habitat there. We're worried about the beaches here in Newport Beach and Huntington Beach. And it's like, that's not where the impacts are. That was probably my wake up moment of like, and she's like, hey, I love that you're donating money, but you're donating money to like these great causes, but I would love to see those resources going back into your supply chain and fixing what's going on back there, because that's where the biggest impacts are. And I remember just like that was like, kind of a gut punch of like, well, of course, but you don't think that way.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest wake up call, and that really set me on my journey of like, I have so much to learn. It was really humbling. And I was like, okay, let's go. And that was like that set me on my course. I just wanted to learn everything I could from these women, and then every other expert that Caring had put in place there at their team in France. They had like a 40-person team there from analysts, reporting, specialists in every field. You could go there once a year, meet with all the brands. And I just remember too, just remembering how small Volcom felt.
Mm.
Right? I had always felt like, oh yeah, I work for Volcom. I work for Volcom, and they're like, who? Like what? It's like, oh, it sounds really cool. And I'm like, and I just remember going like, nobody's heard of us. This is crazy. So it was pretty humbling. But yeah, I learned a lot from their team. But I think looking deep into your manufacturing and where your products are made and built and where all of your materials and inputs are coming from, that's what I learned to do.
When this industry started, a lot of the manufacturing took place here.
Almost all of it. When I first started at Volcom, that's all we did is we made everything domestically. And that was, I think, something that I'm so glad that I got to go through. Because one, that was my first job, was purchasing fabric and trims, right? So Wooly trained me. There were no computers. This is how old I am, right? So there's no computers. Where I remember him like writing things down, erasing it, and we're trying to add up and count yields. And he's like, "So this is what you're gonna buy." I'm like, "Cool, got it." But I had to buy zippers and trims and buttons and every label and every care tag and get things quilted and stuffed and whatever it needed, right? We had to piece all that together. But that also meant when I bought fabric, if I didn't buy correctly, then that also meant I watched it pile up in the warehouse. We had to physically take it off the truck. I had to get my guys and like, okay, get pumped up. There's a big shipment of denim coming, and know where it all is. And so you see it, and you see the impacts, and you see the waste. As soon as that changed and we started to send everything, to import everything, all of a sudden that seemed magical, right? Because it's like, oh, we don't have any problems anymore. That's not true. All of the problems were just somewhere else. They were away, and there is no such place as away, right? And so those are impacts that we know are associated with the manufacturing of our goods. So everything we make has a high energy footprint, greenhouse gases associated with it. We see waste, we see air pollution, water pollution, soil degradation, etc. Like the list goes on and on. But in our true cost sheets, in our cost sheets that we use, we just say how much were the materials, and not any of the. We externalize all of those things. We just say, you know what? No, just what it costs to make it, right? And so we do that. And how much did we pay the maker? How much was packaging, shipping, transportation, any other fees? Cool. There's our cost. That is an artificially low cost, regardless of what country you're coming from, right? We do everything we can to squeeze that cost as low as we can, and we shave off every externality that we can. And to your point where you said, Those are things that um, nobody wants to pay for, but yet we are all paying for them in some way, right? And so it's reared its ugly head now. We're all dealing with the greenhouse gas emissions of the last 100 years, and so we have to start to account for those somehow. I'm not saying it's realistic to start piling those costs in, but our prices are artificially low, and that's for sure. So I think what we have to do is fix both. I think onshoring is great because there's great benefit to that as well, but there's no denying that we will always keep chasing low costs. And to do that, we're going to typically move to other countries where wages are lower, right? So I think we have to address that though as well and clean up energy supply over there. Make sure we've got good, safe, fair working conditions for workers over there. Factories are safe. Nobody should be dying. Communities should not be suffering. And ecosystems should not be collapsing because of the sweatshirt and the shirt that you and I are both wearing. So I think we have to do that work in both places.
I think one of the other things, maybe a larger issue, is that the entire surf industry was born on this, what you call the linear model. Tell me what the
Yeah.
linear model is and what the problem is.
Yeah, well, and not only just the surf industry, but all industries. Most all, as the Industrial Revolution evolved and we went into business mode and making things and selling stuff and building products for ourselves, we tended to have this vision where we extract materials, natural resources, we extract them, we convert them into usable materials, manufacture goods out of them, we sell those, we use them, and we dispose of them, right? It's like, cool, I'm done with that, there we go. And then eventually we started to come up with this, like, well, maybe we should recycle some of that. There was that. But a linear business model is this idea where we don't value the inputs that went into that product, right? So when I'm done with this sweatshirt, it's like, well, then it's gonna, sure, maybe I'll send it to a thrift store, but it's destined for a landfill. We don't have recycling services for it. We never have. Footwear, for example, it's meant to, we extract, we make, we use, we throw away. The circular economy is the opposite of that, right? Or the next phase of that, where it's like, no, there are valuable resources in this. There are embedded resources. All of the energy, the water, the chemicals, all of the effort, everything that went into this. Like, there's no reason that we shouldn't try to value those materials and keep them at their highest level. Recover, take ownership of them, and recover those when they're done, and get them back into the system, right? And not only get them back into the system in a downgraded way. Right now, we might take this and turn it into a wiper rag or something else, or insulation or stuffing somewhere else. No, this should be used over and over to make another sweatshirt, and do it again and do it again. Less hazardous chemicals, very efficient, renewable inputs, etc. So that would be our aspiration to a circular economy. But the old way is what got us into this model, was sort of like, don't ask any questions, just sell the product, ship it, and then make them buy another one. Make sure they don't use it for too long. We don't necessarily need them holding on to it for too long or fixing it. Don't worry, we'll just make another one and sell you another one. So yeah, it's kind of a broken and inefficient system for sure.
You know, the pandemic sort of forced us all to think a little differently, and I think a lot of us learned that we could live with a little less, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
and we'll be okay. In fact, our lives might actually be better in some regards. And then the fact that these supply chains blew up across the world too has got us rethinking those, and like, okay, wait a minute, what's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
And so
Yep.
the opportunity seems so ripe right now, which is why I think what you're doing, I think people like you are so necessary right now with
Mm.
where we are. People are searching for, it's not an awareness problem in my mind. It's a what to do with it problem.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
like, well, what are the trade-offs here? And it is a gray area. You
It's
realize it's
always
like
a gray area.
there's no black and white. It's like
No.
there's a trade-off in each one of those. And I think a lot of it is just understanding what those are, so you can make the decision that does the least amount of damage. Um,
Yeah, make the least amount of damage, or look at it the other way, or to make the most the biggest positive impact. Like you said, it is always a gray area. There are always trade-offs. There is no easy button,
Yep.
and there is never someone's like, "Well, is this one better or that?" I'm like, I don't know, and that's not a cop out. Let's walk through it, So
Well, listen, I'm going to be leaning on you a lot, so I thank you.
no, thank you, Chris.
I
Thanks for
really,
highlighting the work I do, and great conversation, asking good questions. I really appreciate it. And as you saw, I'll go all day. So when you're ready for the next one, let's dive in.
yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it again soon. Thanks so much, Derek.
Thanks, Chris. Talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Okay.